We need to stop it. I knew I shouldn't have done this.
When I first saw Eternights back in 2022, when it was revealed at the PlayStation State of Play, it really reminded me of Persona 5. Like, a lot. So I wasn't surprised in the slightest when the devs said that after they played Persona 5, they quit their job to make what turned out to be Eternights. And what a great job this indie developer did with this game, as Eternights feels like the bite-sized Persona game that I've always wanted. The game follows you as the main character as you and your best friend Chani are living your best young adult life, trying to set up dating profiles and going out to see K-pop concerts. Seriously, as someone who just went to their first K-pop concert earlier this year, this game was way more relatable in many aspects for me personally than I ever thought it would be. The game definitely has a particular charm to it that I really enjoyed. But their world quickly gets turned upside down when the apocalypse starts and you'll have to team up with an eclectic cast of characters to save the world. That part not nearly as relatable, but the charming part still is. But they'll have to do that all while still managing to find time to go on a few dates in the process. So let's quickly talk about what I liked most about Eternights.
We're going out on a date.
Eternights is essentially an action dating sim where you play it day by day like how it does in the Persona games. You can go on dates throughout the week, battle through dungeons, or even scavenge and train with your friends, but whatever you choose to do, it's all up to you. The only catch is that there's this whole end of the world thing happening that you sorta have to deal with as it's literally looming in the background. So there are various points throughout the game where there will be time-sensitive missions you need to complete by certain dates. But if you're anything like me, you can do all the fun stuff with your friends first, go out on as many dates as possible, and then save that ever so important stuff to the very last day, which honestly sounds a lot like how I lived my life back in high school, so this was bringing back those memories. But it's this freedom of approach that I really enjoyed about this game. Having that free time between those checkpoints with the main plot felt refreshing and allowed me to really gravitate towards certain characters a lot more, especially when you can only do so many things in a given day, so you'll need to choose which characters you really want to spend your precious time with, because isn't that exactly like real life? Speaking of the characters, let's talk about the dating sim aspect, because that might actually be one of the best components of the entire game. Throughout the game, you meet a cast of characters with different abilities that join your team, and aside from your best friend, you can almost date all of them. And not only do the dialogue choices you make matter for your future romance with a partner, but in every decision you make, there's a component that affects your social attributes like your confidence and your expression, just to name a few. But the feature that I really like here is that every time you level up each of these components, you'll unlock new dialogue for each of the characters, who happen to all fit into one of these social categories. Like for instance, the K-pop star Yuna is all about being expressive, so in order to go out on dates with her, that's a component you'll need to level up. So needless to say, I maxed that component out as fast as I could, because let's be real, who wouldn't want to go on a date with a K-pop star? The last thing I want to mention about the dating sim aspect of this game is how it relates to the combat. As the stronger the bond you have with any one character, the stronger their support abilities will be to assist you in battle. This can be in the form of increasing your health and damage, but other times it can be in the form of revives or new abilities that can actually help change up gameplay. The overall writing of the dialogue is also pretty great in this game, which definitely helps to enhance the dating sim aspect of it. It helps the game and the characters in it feel pretty natural, like things people would actually say, and was probably the least wooden aspect about the game in general. And combine that with the surprisingly impressive voice acting in this, and there were characters and scenarios that I really got engrossed with. Also, a lot of the character interactions were hilarious and pretty meta, so you'll get quite a few laughs out of this game, which elevates it in my opinion, especially since comedy isn't always the easiest thing to pull off in video games. The last thing I really want to touch upon here are the overall presentation values. What's on display here is very impressive for an indie developer. There are sometimes fully animated cutscenes presented in an anime style, which were always enjoyable to watch. But the character designs all felt super differentiated, which in my opinion is important for a dating sim. The overall aesthetic is enjoyable, with the lighting and color palette giving off this sort of neon glow aesthetic that I very much enjoyed. Though overall the animations left much to be desired, so let's talk about that now and what I think they could improve upon about this game. The animations are probably the first thing that people will visually notice about the game, as it can sometimes stick out like a bit of a sore thumb, especially compared to the overall presentation values of the rest of the game. They're rather stiff in terms of body movements in various cutscenes, so the game often cuts away to a line of text to try and get around this issue, which is fine at first, but it quickly becomes very apparent as to why they are doing that very early in the game. The facial expressions and fighting animations in combat aren't half bad, but there's nothing in this area of the game in particular that wowed me either. But speaking of the combat and the action mechanics of the gameplay, overall it feels solid for what it is, but at the end of the day, it's nothing truly special. It's more hack and slash by nature, which can be fine, but I often found that the overall concept of switching between light and heavy attacks in combat didn't really evolve throughout the game very much, at least not quite enough for me. They try and add in other elements to it, like breaking shields and matching up different elements associated to breaking those shields, which was fun at first, but much like a lot of the combat in the game, after you do it for a couple of hours, the novelty quickly wears off. And by the end of it, I kind of just found myself mashing heavy attacks because that's all you really need to do to win. However, it's not all doom and gloom from a gameplay perspective, as the dodging system feels very rewarding no matter how many times I did it. So I wish they could have found something that was just as satisfying as timing of the dodges for other aspects of the combat, as I feel like that would have made it a lot more dynamic than where it currently is at. The last thing that I think they could have improved upon a bit more was the overall story, and specifically the writing towards the latter half of the game. The game gets off to a pretty great start with the concept of providing that initial boost in momentum. It has great pace in the first half as you learn about your powers and what's going on in the world, but the second half kind of feels rushed as you're introduced to a couple of important characters that in my opinion you barely get enough time with, and it would have been difficult to romance them on your first playthrough given the pacing so far. There are a few questionable choices in the direction of certain characters down the stretch, one mainly being a little girl that never really feels like it pays off ever. So I honestly wouldn't have minded if they took that aspect of the storyline out completely if they weren't going to flesh it out more than what they did. But still, for an indie game developer, I have to commend them for the ambition that they showed with this game. I just think that there needed to be a few more things here that could have been executed in a better way.
Wait for me! Goodbye.
I want to wake up! It's not over! Not yet!
Despite some of the issues that I had with Eternights, I enjoyed my time with the game. It took me around 12 hours to fully complete it, and that was with me doing as many things as I could do in each and every day. And still, there were plenty of things I wasn't able to complete, like certain character quest lines and scavenging items, so there's a decent amount of replay value here if you're someone who is interested in seeing more storylines all the way through to the end, or even if you're someone who's interested in making different dialogue choices. But I really have to commend Studio Psy for their work on this game. As an indie developer with their first official game release, this game showed off a lot of promise, and I think there's a decent amount of people who will enjoy this game. Like, anyone who wants a Persona game that isn't 100+ hours will certainly vibe with this one. So I'm gonna give Eternights a 7.7 out of 10. It's a good game. But that's it for my review of Eternights, so please let me know if this is one you'll be picking up and playing. 2023 has been a busy year for video games, and it's set to be even crazier with the lineup that we have coming our way this fall. So be sure to subscribe to me here for previews and reviews on upcoming games. I was able to get my hands on a decent amount of these games early this fall, so I'm planning on making reviews for as many of them as I possibly can. I also post short form videos on games, movies, and anime over on my Instagram and TikTok, where we are so close to getting to 100k followers, so please join us there as well. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. But also how those at the top are often far too eager to take credit from those whose creations aren't even theirs. There's another scene that exemplifies this very well with Oppenheimer and the president that just leaves the worst kind of taste in your mouth after all is said and done. But that's what the storytelling of this movie really excelled at. Telling a story about something that is so morally complicated and eventually how it impacts all of those who are involved.